Are you thinking about playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but you're not sure where to get started? Well, today we're going to take a look at the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner Box. Let's roll. Hey friends, this is Brian at Jacoby, and if you haven't played Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it's really a fantastic set of game mechanics. But the core rulebook weighs in at 640 pages. That can be very intimidating. The good news is we have an excellent resource in the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner Box. Inside this Beginner Box, you have everything that you need to start playing, everything that you need to start running the game. It's perfect for beginning game masters and beginning players. So let's flip the camera around. We'll do a top-down view and a flip through of everything that's contained within this box. All right, so here we go, taking a look at the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner Box. So we pop this little baby open, and we start out with a pack of 6 colored dice. So each of these are colored because, you'll see when we get to the character sheets that to help new players to the game differentiate between each of these dice, it's broken down into color-coded keys so that you can tell this is a D4, this is a D6, etc. We have some Pathfinder Pawn standee bases. We have player reference cards, and we'll take a closer look at these in a minute, but these are super handy. These are a really great asset to have for brand new players. An advertisement for Pathfinder Society. If you're not familiar with Pathfinder Society, it's an ongoing sort of like the Dungeon Adventures or Adventurers Guild product from Wizards of the Coast. And then on the back of this, basically showing you how you can continue with additional products beyond this beginner box. So the Adventure Path Troubles in Otari is a follow-on adventure path that takes place directly after the introductory adventure that comes in the beginner box set. And then, of course, the core rulebook and some of the other materials that had been released at the time of this printing. Inside, we've already covered the player reference cards, the dice, and the pawn sets. We're going to take a look at the Hero's Handbook, Game Master's Guide, character sheets, Pregen character sheets, Pathfinder pawns for the monsters and player characters that are in this adventure, and then a double-sided flip mat that serves as sort of a battle map for the 2 layers of kind of dungeon adventure in this set. Of course, this was flipped upside down in my version because this wasn't a true unboxing, but for people who are just getting into this, read this first, basically walking you through step by step exactly what you need to do to get started with this product. So there's a solo adventure that comes in the Hero's Handbook, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, and then talking about if you have a group, if you want to get started right away, using the pre-generated characters so that people who are new to the game, or if you set this up, in a short time frame and want to get started with the game, use the pre-generated content. That way you don't have to go through the process of making characters and stuff like that. And then, of course, making your own characters talks about here's where you go within the books to get that started. And then for game masters, talking about here's where you can get started. If you're going to be the game master, you're going to be the person who's in charge of telling this story or getting folks started with this adventure. Here's where you go to start that learning process. Character sheets, as you would expect, just templated character sheets. And as I said, along the side of the character sheet here, we have a clear not character kit, but a dice key that corresponds to the colors of each of the dice that come in the set. So this is helpful, again, if you have folks who are brand new to role-playing games and they're not really clear on what we might mean when we say a D20, a D12, etc. This helps them differentiate each of those different polyhedral dice shapes. So you get 6 of these blank character sheets for when you want to fill out your own character sheet. You also have 4 pre-generated character sheets. We'll take a look at those in just a second. This is the double-sided battle map. We'll take a look at that in just a bit too. Let's get started, not with the Game Master's Guide, but let's get started first with the Hero's Handbook, because this is where most folks are going to start out. So this is 72 pages of content, but what I really like about this, as I was looking through the box set content again just before recording this, one of the things that I really like about this is there's no wasted space. We have on the back cover a quick rules reference. It's the same on the back of the Player's Handbook as well as the Game Master's Guide. Some basic rules that players might want to refer to for getting knocked out, the rules for dying, stuff like that. On the inside front cover, normally this would maybe be either a blank page or an advertisement, something like that. But in here, this walks you through all of the character creation steps. So creating a concept, start building ability modifiers, selecting an ancestry, things like that. And we'll take a look through these basic steps when we start flipping into the player's or the Hero's Handbook, as it's called. Not even a player's handbook, but a hero's handbook. So page 1, table of contents. So basically walks you through everything that's in here. So we start out with a 6-page solo play adventure. So this is good because if you're brand new to role-playing games, this kind of walks you through the process of kind of creating a bit of a choose-your-own-adventure kind of process. And if you don't have somebody to play with, like maybe if you were a game master and you wanted to run this for some of your friends, but it wasn't game night yet, you wanted to become acquainted with some of the rules and some of the flow of playing this game, go through this solo adventure, and it gives you a good depiction of what to expect. The next page, I think it's just one page of example play. And in this example play, it walks through in a narrative style the process of kind of an exploration and the start of combat. Getting started walks you through, again, the basics. Here are the dice, notations for actions that you can take while you're playing. So something that is new to Pathfinder 2, if you haven't played before, you get 3 actions and 1 reaction each round. So sometimes doing something will take 1 action, sometimes it'll be 2 actions. So if it's a more complicated action, that'll represent 2 actions, or up to 3 actions. And then, of course, you get a reaction depending on what's happening during the course of the round. Then we get into creating your hero. So again, walking through step by step, creating a concept. Start with your ability modifiers, selecting an ancestry, which is, in this book, they pare it down to just human, dwarf, and elf to reduce the number of choices that a person would have to make while they're making a character. You pick a background to inform your playstyle based on what was your character doing before this adventure. And again, it's, I think, 2 pages worth of backgrounds that are present in this beginner box to give you, a couple of choices that you can go through. Choosing a class. The classes that are available in the beginner box are narrowed down to 4, again, to constrain the number of choices and keep things simple for the benefit of just getting started and getting into play. So you can choose between a cleric, fighter, rogue, or wizard. So we'll see that in a couple minutes. And then walking through buying equipment, and then finishing up your hero with skills and some other things that might need to come in place. We talk about the 6 ability modifiers, and then we get into ancestries. So as I said, we have choices between dwarf, elf, and human, and one page for each of the ancestries, talking about what are they, a couple of different sub ancestry options for each of the human, dwarf, and elf ancestries. Backgrounds, as I said, about a page and a half, I guess, of different ancestries. So we have the acolyte, criminal, deckhand, farmhand, gambler, scholar, or warrior. So some basic backgrounds to get folks started. If they're just starting out and want to create their own character, maybe they wanted to have somebody who was a deckhand and came to this location on a ship, things like that. Then we get into the classes. So cleric is the first step. Walking through, here's what a cleric is. If you wanted to play a cleric, you're going to be supporting and healing your allies with divine spells. You'll fight with a favored weapon of your deity. Know about religion and writing and images, or religious writing and images, rather. And you are opposed to and destroy evil undead creatures. Talks a little bit about what to expect if you're going to be playing a cleric. So again, if you're brand new, this is interesting because if you don't know anything about different classes in role-playing games, this is very helpful. Within the beginner box, they narrow down the deity selection to just 3. If you're familiar with Pathfinder, you probably know about Desna, Sarenrae, and Torag, 3 of the probably more popular deities in the world of Golarion. Then we get into a narrowed down set of cleric spells, so cantrips, things that you can cast multiple times per day, first level spells, second level class features, third level class features, and then second level cleric spells. Then we get into the fighter, again, talking about here's what's going to happen if you're going to play a fighter. Here's what to expect. If you want to be the one who rushes headlong into battle and swings a sword around or protects themselves with a shield, stuff like that. Similarly, going through the second level fighter class features, third level class features, and sort of which skills increase and feats, things like that. As you level up to level 3. Then we get into the rogue, same thing, following the same basic concept, talking about here's what a rogue does, here's how to level them up, and wizard, similar to the cleric, all of the basics, and then a pared down list of cantrips, first level and second level spells within the book. Equipment. So each of the classes have a basic set of equipment that you can start with to keep things easy. Or you could also say you have a certain amount of money. I think it was I want to say 50 gold, maybe. Sort of the starting money that you start with, and your character. Your player, rather, could go through and pick which pieces of equipment they're going to spend their money on and what they're going to start the adventure with. We also get into things like cost of living, stuff like that. Then we get to the finishing your hero section, which is where we basically just solidify everything. We finish writing up all of our skills, adding in any bonuses or numbers that haven't been filled out on our sheet. The next section, skills, talks about each of the skills that are present on the player sheet and some ideas of what are the untrained actions that a player could take or a character could take, and what are the trained actions, and which ability each of these skills are based on, stuff like that. And then longer skill descriptions for each of the skills, just so that it's clear what you can use each of these skills for, and where you might be crossing a line if you wanted to try something, but it just wasn't possible given a certain skill. We get into the playing the game portion, which basically talks about here are all the things that you're going to be doing during play. rolling checks and understanding what that means, if it's successful or not successful. Rest and daily preparations, so understanding how rest will reset your hit points and or the spells that you're able to learn for the next day. Basic actions, what to expect during your turn. And let's see, what else do we have in here? Attacks and damage, movement, damaging items, what happens when you're taking cover, movement, durations for spells or for conditions and effects, and then basically what happens if your character is reduced to 0 hit points or is potentially dying. Like, how do they resolve the checks to see if their character ultimately perishes? And then conditions. Conditions sort of lists out sort of what happens if you're concealed, what happens if you're dying, what happens if you're flat-footed, frightened, grabbed, etc. And then a brief note about leveling up. So noting that once you reach 1,000 experience points, you level up. This beginner box set will cover a character from levels 1 to level 3, and then after that you would need to move on to other materials to continue advancement. Again, inside back cover is used for another kind of cheat sheet, like here's what to expect when you've been knocked out, when you're dying, stuff like that. And then the back cover, a quick rules reference. Now let's take a look at the player sheets. So on the front, you get this great large piece of artwork, again, with the play a fighter if you want to section to help people decide which class they might want to play. On the inside, all of the stats, everything's all mapped out so that you can grab this and start going straight away. All of the equipment, ancestries, things like that. And then on the back, it gives a sort of biography of the character. And that's true of each of the 4 character sheets that you have here. Valros the Fighter, Ezrin the Wizard, Kyra the Cleric, and Mauricio the Rogue. And if you've played Pathfinder before, you know that these are a couple of the iconics that have been part of the Pathfinder game since 1st edition Pathfinder. And so this is the 2nd edition, 1st level version of each of these characters. And one tip that I have, if you're going to be using these pre-gen sheets, I suggest folding them and sliding them into a page protector. This way, your players can use these sheets without marking them up with pencil or pen, and instead use these page protectors so that players could use dry erase markers if they need to make adjustments on the sheets themselves. So that's a quick tip for how to keep these a little bit better protected so that they don't become marked up and damaged and can be reused multiple times. Okay, the player reference cards. See if I can get these close to the camera so that it focuses. Hopefully that's focused. There we go. So here we talk about what happens when you're rolling d20 to determine success or failure with various checks. What happens if you roll a 20 or a 1, and difficulty checks or difficulty class for various rolls. Across the top, you can use chits that are included in the pawn set that will help sort of check off the number of actions and reaction that a player has used during the course of their turn. And then down here, some of the actions that they could be taking and the number of actions that each of these represent. On the back, there's a very handy list of conditions and description of each of those conditions, what happens to your character if they're prone or restrained, etc. So again, these are super handy. I like having these available, especially for brand new players. It's really pretty awesome. Now let's take a look at the Game Master Guide. So similar to the player guide or the player hero handbook, however we're calling it, really no wasted space here. So we have the first level dungeon map that's on the inside front cover, and even the back cover has another quick rules reference, and inside back cover has some GM specific tables that will be helpful. So after the table of contents, we get right into Menace under Otari. So this is, I think, laid out in a very interesting way, because it's not a rules first, then get into the adventure. It's an adventure first and walk through the rules while you're taking your players through the adventure, which I think is a great way to start GMs in their journey. Because instead of having to first learn pages and pages and pages of rules, basically what this does is it takes you through, okay, here's where we're at. Here's how we resolve these things. Here are things as the GM that you need to keep in mind as you go through combat and whatever else. So it's a nice little adventure. Let's see, how many pages did we say this is? I think we started on page 3 and we go through page, I think, 27. So it's like a 24-page adventure that takes players through 2 dungeon levels, basically, under Otari. So I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't want it to be a huge spoiler if you are planning on running this or planning on playing it. If you're planning on playing it, please don't watch any spoilers, because that's not as much fun. After the Menace under Otari brief adventure, we get into game mastering. So here it talks a little bit more about how you plan a session, start your session, how you plan a campaign, stuff like that, what to do for exploration, how to choose monster actions during encounters, what to do during downtime, experience points, accomplishments, things like that, awarding treasure, some more discussion about difficulty classes and how to represent the difficulty of different actions that somebody might be taking. Building adventures. So it gives some brief ideas of how do you come up with a story? What are the locations? Drawing maps and tips about drawing those maps. Starter stories. I thought this was pretty cool. There are actually 8 sort of adventure seeds that are written up here that a creative game master could take these and run with. So it's not limited only to the 27-page adventure here, but here are 8 additional ideas for things that could be happening after you first run the Menace under Otari adventure. Building challenges, encounters, other challenges, things like that. Role playing. The story. How do you create a good story? How do you present that story to your players? This, I thought, was a fantastic addition to this book. Environments. So what are the different environments that people could be adventuring in? Maybe because Otari is a coastal city or coastal town, maybe you want to have a shipwreck or something that they're going to explore off the coast. So here are some rules for aquatic adventures. Arctic adventures, which they would have to travel a little bit to get to, unless maybe there's a mountain nearby that they climb, and now they're in an Arctic environment. Desert environments, forests, mountains, plains, swamps, giving game masters an idea of how to play each of these different environments. Underground environments, considerations of climate. Is there fog? Is there precipitation? What's the visibility like? Thunderstorms, temperature, wind, stuff like that. Then we get into a couple pages of talking about hazards. So traps, environmental hazards, things like that. magic items, so a pared down list of magical items that you could put into your game, some of which I believe are already presented in the Menace Under Otari adventure. And then we get into a mini bestiary. So listing out a number of creatures that you could put into your own adventures, and some of these creatures are even kind of alluded to in the 8 adventure seeds that we saw on a previous page. So a bunch of these. And the other cool thing, we're going to take a look at pawns in just a minute. Each of these creatures are also represented in the pawns that come with this set. At the back of the book, we have kind of a gazetteer of Otari. So talking about the city of Otari, talking about a little bit about the background, all of the NPCs that are there, the landmarks, and goods and services, things like that, and another set of story seeds. So again, if you need some additional ideas for stories that you could create for your characters to embark on after they finish the first adventure that's in this set, here are a bunch of story seeds that you could plan out. You could flesh out based on the interests of the folks who are at your table and take them through additional adventures. And then an index, and then the back covers, which, as I noted, have additional material there. The pawns. So I love Pathfinder pawns. I have several sets of Pathfinder pawns because I think they are really, really helpful. They take up very little space because they're just a thick piece of sort of cardstock or chipboard. You get plenty of pawns on each page, and this comes with 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of pawns. Same artwork on the front and back. Great artwork, matching the artwork that's in the bestiaries and things like that. In here, we should see, so we see the player, the pre-generated characters that are with the box set, as well as some basic like wizard elf female, rogue elf female, things like that, who if you're making your own character, you could pick one of these pawns and run with that. And then lots of monsters. As I mentioned earlier, there are chits available for the players to use in association with their player reference card to represent the number of actions that they've taken and the reactions that they've taken during the course of their turn. And finally, I'm not going to be able to get this all in the shots, but we have a 2-sided battle map. So this is the full 2-level dungeon that's presented in the adventure. I love these because it's so much easier than drawing everything out on a dry erase mat or whatever else. The only thing that I don't particularly like is sometimes if your players are clever, they might have an idea of what to expect in each of these rooms, right? They might see this treasure chest and be like, oh, well, I'm going to go straight to this room for that treasure. It takes some of the surprise away, I guess. So you may want to lay out some papers on top of this to block vision, so that in the top corner over here, if I can get this in camera, like there's a big, obviously a big treasure room. So characters are going to be very incentivized to head over there. I don't think there are any secret doors or anything like that in this adventure set, but if there were, that kind of ruins a little bit of it. There are some areas where, like, there's rubble across an area. Like if the player characters went around this way, if this was supposed to be blocked off, they wouldn't be able to see this zone. But with this, maybe they can decipher just the way that the map is laid out. They might be able to see, oh, you know what? I'm going to try to climb through here or whatever else, skipping past some of the other rooms. But that's a minor quip, and creative GMs can find ways around that. Like I said, maybe you put out some pieces of paper to kind of block off different areas until the players move into those areas. The only other thing that was in the box set is just an advertisement for Sirenscape. If you're not familiar with Sirenscape, this is a great app that you can use for ambient sounds within your while you're playing your game, while you're at your table or online, wherever you might want to use it. It just gives an additional layer of depth, and I really like it. So that's it for the box set. Let's flip around and close things out. So there's a flip through of the Pathfinder Beginner Box set for 2nd edition. If you head over to Paizo.com before January 25th, 2023, you can also purchase this box set at a discounted rate, as well as a discount on the core rulebook and several other rulebooks in the Pathfinder 2e gaming line, using the coupon code OPENGAMING. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hit like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. And until we meet again, roll well, my friends.